Larry Fuda, a veteran pilot with 30 years flying experience, came close to disaster in 1989 when a freak combination of events crippled his aircraft.
It was a pretty day, weather was good. We had a very routine flight out of Washington right on into Charlotte. Everything went as it was supposed to go until we made our approach into the Charlotte airport.
Captain Fuda was about to be faced with an emergency he had never before experienced. His landing gear would not come down.
I asked the co-pilot to put the landing gear down, and at that time we had two red lights on the main gear. Our nose gear was down, but our main gear showed that neither gear was down. Instant response to something of that magnitude was that maybe we had an electrical problem. There's no way that both gears could fail at the same time.
At a loss to explain the malfunction, Captain Fuda radioed his base for advice.
I had no idea what was causing it. In fact, the company people, the Boeing people, our maintenance people, nobody could understand why neither main gear was coming down.
Soon, the passengers began to realize that there was something wrong.
Because I had flown before and knew that it was only like an hour, hour and a half to Charlotte, then I knew, wait a minute, something's up because we have not gotten, we're not descending.
Fuda couldn't tell if he had an electrical fault with his warning light or if his landing gear was jammed. He decided to fly over the airport control tower.
Being this close into the runway at this time, we had to make a decision fast. So I made a low pass across the control tower at Charlotte. And at that time, they confirmed that neither main gear was down and locked. So that kindly threw out the electrical problem.
He would have to try and use G-force to pull the landing gear down.
I climbed the aircraft to 10,000 feet, and we dove it over at a pretty steep angle, right down to 5,000 feet. We have a speed clacker that goes off, and I can recall that speed clacker going off, so I know I was doing 350 knots at that time. And at 5,000 feet, we pulled it out with a G-force. And the right gear came out at that time. So we explained to the passengers that we had one of the gear out, and it was a very uncomfortable ride. However, we were going to try it again.
If you've ever been on a roller coaster, that's exactly what it's like. But you go straight up and then you go straight down. And your ears block and all of that, and it's a real fast coming down. I can remember that.
I've never been in the back of an aircraft when it went into a dive like that. As far as an average passenger, I'm sure it frightened them to death.
The second dive failed to free the left side landing gear. Larry Fuda's next strategy was even more daring. He was going to bounce the 737 on the right gear to try and knock the left gear down. He would have to hit the runway at over 170 miles per hour.
If the airspeed gets low, it could be very dangerous. That's the reason why you come in way above landing speed in order to keep the left wing up.
His first attempt failed. Then he turned the aircraft around and tried again. Captain Fuda tried 3 times to bounce the gear out, but it remained jammed. He had only one option left.
We were getting at the point now to where we were down fuel load wise, and we was going to have to make a decision fast. Went out and advised the passengers and the flight attendants that we was going to have to land, and for the flight attendants to put the passengers into a crash landing mode.
I didn't know, or I didn't want to think about the end or how bad it was going to be.
As he made the final approach, the captain's main priority was to keep the plane on the runway.
And there was quite a bit of buildings on the side of the runway, our maintenance buildings, and I really didn't want to go into a spin and end up in one of those buildings with 100 passengers on board.
To keep the plane straight, he decided he would have to blow the tires, but this meant going against his training and switching off the anti-skid device.
And we thought if we turned the anti-skid off as soon as we touched down, that maybe I could lock the brakes on the side where the gear was down and blow those tires, and that would put enough drag into that side to equalize out the side that did not have the landing gear on it.
His theory worked, and the aircraft held the center line, stopping halfway down the runway.
It wasn't over with once the aircraft was on the ground and everything's safe. You know, we had a little fire, we had emergency equipment spraying foam all over the aircraft, and I had 100 passengers in the back that we had to get off.
The passengers escaped unharmed. The only injury sustained was to Captain Fuda. As he jumped from the cockpit window to help his passengers, he broke a finger.
I was very thankful that no one got hurt. And the only reason why I got hurt was going out the window. You know, I don't care if I broke a leg or a neck or whatever, as long as my passengers got off. That's the main concern of anybody in charge of an aircraft, is to get your aircraft and your passengers on the ground safe.
It's amazing that we got out. And the only reason I think we did was because of the pilot being so senior and flying. And I don't know if he's been through things like that before, but he knew what to do. It's amazing that we're still here.
The problem started when the ground crew placed the chocks inside the wheel wells of the undercarriage, forgetting to remove them when the plane was cleared to leave. The plane's initial flight path made things worse.
It all started really on our takeoff procedure out of Washington National Airport. And the procedure out of there is you make an immediate left turn because of a restricted area, and then you make an immediate right turn. Well, when we took off with that immediate left turn, one of the chocks slid in place on the left gear, and when I made the right turn out, it slid in place on the right gear. Well, I've had several people tell me that you could win the lottery before this would happen.